Welcome to the AskARoofer podcast, where all your roofing questions find their answers. Your hosts, Megan Ellsworth and Lauren White, peel back the layers of the roofing world to reveal the knowledge, tips, and FAQs you've been curious about. From shingles to skylights, metal to asphalt, we're here to demystify the system above your head. So get ready to ask, learn, and explore the fascinating world of roofing, one question at a time, on the AskARoofer podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lauren White, and I am here for another episode of the AskARoofer podcast. And I am so excited. We have two guests today from Raincoat Roofing to talk about commercial roof emergency response essentials. So let's start with Sarah. Will you introduce yourself, please, in your role at Raincoat Roofing?
Hi, everybody. I am Sarah Sutton-Shouse, and I'm the Director of Service Ops at Raincoat Roofing.
Awesome. And Eric?
Eric Suess. I'm the president of the maintenance division, and my dad owns Raincoat Roofing, so kind of the partner in crime that makes Raincoat what it is.
Very nice. I love it. Well, great. So let's just get right into it. How do you define a roofing emergency on a commercial property?
I think the customer is really what defines a roofing emergency. If the customer feels like the leak is urgent enough, if the customer feels like the damage is bad enough that they're willing to, call us out and say it's an emergency, it's an emergency. I think where we see the differentiators are between like a blow-off emergency and a life-threatening emergency versus just a roof leak. But anything that, you have an impact to the business, impact to the dwelling, anything like that, that can't be stopped by a bucket or held off should be considered an emergency.
I think that building owners, there was a saying that I had learned a long time ago that says people don't care about the roofs, they don't care about water in their buildings. And, anytime that there's water coming in a building, whether it be in a commercial building or a house or any type of structure, people don't like it. So they define what the emergency is. Sometimes it's, hey, you got to get out here. It's leaking over a panel and you got to get out here today. Sometimes it's, hey, it's an emergency, but we can wait till Monday or wait till the following day. So emergencies are defined by what the customer's level of pain is. Having a full-blown maintenance company, we definitely have different variations. We've had some crazy weather in Chicago and had some different emergencies where it's, get out here now, get it buttoned up, and it might be putting a tarp over, might be a temporary roof. So there's a lot of different ways to define an emergency. But like I said, I think the way that I always look at it is that, people aren't as worried about the roof as they are about the water that's coming into the building.
Yeah, that's, I think, an important distinction to make. And, to your point, too, if it's over an electrical panel or over, something that's really sensitive and needs to be taken care of, that's where that kind of line, that spectrum of emergency can come in.
Today with all the servers and computers and IT stuff, that really, escalates a lot of the calls that we get. If it's leaking in any of those areas, it's like, how, you should have been here 10 minutes ago. No, that is just a crazy, crazy trigger, where if it's leaking in the middle of a factory where they make widgets, yeah, we can wait. The ceiling's not falling in. It's leaking over, a line someplace. Get out here as soon as you can.
Yeah. And I think the differentiator too is what kind of customer are they? Are they residential? Because a residential emergency is going to look very different from a commercial emergency. So know your customer, and ultimately that's going to be your dictating factor, all told.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when a building owner notices, an emergency, what are some things that they should or should not do, kind of that immediate next step? And, why is a quick professional response really important?
Don't stop after one phone call. A lot of times they'll leave a voicemail with one person and just assume that that person's going to call them back. If you have a company that you use, call the main line, call the emergency line, call your rep so that as many people know that you have an issue with. I think that I called and left a voicemail is kind of the default. But if you called and left a voicemail and you didn't get an immediate call back, you're not getting addressed as quickly as you should. So make another phone call. I think that they should not stop calling until they have a representative on the phone.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to make sure that the company that you're calling, you know the avenues of how to call. At Raincoat, we've got a couple different ways that you can call in. so many times you hear, you made a phone call and the contractor's not in business anymore. I just had my roof put on 2 years ago. So knowing your contractor, knowing what roof you have, you should be getting the manufacturer involved. You still have a guarantee if there's still some sort of, NDL, whatever it is. Those are things you have to put into the emergency. Like, okay, how am I going to fix this where it's not going to void the rest of the roof?
Mhm.
If it's a true emergency and there's a fire, one thing you're gonna guarantee is you're gonna have damage outside of what you called us for. Because if the fire department or somebody else has to come out, they chop holes, they do all kinds of things. They're not worried about the roof. They're worried about getting their emergency to stop, and then we have to fix that emergency after the fact. So I think really making sure that you've got a good call system when you have an emergency and somebody's calling. It's not uncommon that when you are in the middle of emergency, like Sarah said, you're going to leave a voicemail. But with at Raincoat, we've probably got 2 or 3 different ways that people can call in. You can go to the website. We've got an emergency number. You've got the main line. We've got cell phones. So it's knowing the contractor and the best way to get a hold of them. Sometimes it's reaching out to the salesman. Some people have just a really good relationship with their salesperson, and they might call them directly. And that's fine, because then the salesperson gets a hold of the person at the company. The other thing you got to think about with emergencies too, as a contractor, is in a perfect world, you're going to get the call at 7 o'clock in the morning when all the stores are open and everything's ready, right? But that's not always the case. So you have to be prepared as a company as well. So we have emergency stuff in the shop that we know that is there for those types of things. Tarps, pumps, materials, that kind of stuff, that no matter what, we can grab something and make the building watertight. A tarp's not always the answer. We just had an instance last week or 2 weeks ago where we had an emergency. We went out and temped the roof, and then we got more storms and more of the roof blew off. We had to go temp the temps to put more. So sometimes it's not always a one and done.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good advice on a lot of different avenues to, be able to call and get an answer, get a person on the line and get the response.
Yeah, and a good contractor does have many avenues for their customers to get a hold of them. But the most important part, I think, is making that initial contact. So if the customer is calling in and they have to leave 2 voicemails to get a hold of you and they don't get a call back within 30 minutes, I think that's the absolute minimum that they should be expecting. If it took me that long to get a hold of a contractor I was trying to give business to, I'd probably move on by then. So you want that immediate response for the customer, because response time is everything. Even if you can't get out there immediately, even if you've got to mobilize, get text to the shop and everything like that, you still want that customer to know you're coming. So pick up the phone and call that customer and let them know that you're responding, you're acknowledging you've got it, and this is when we'll be on site. Because a lot of times that's what the customer wants, is they just want to be able to say, I know what's happening. The contractor got a hold of my information and they know what I need. So yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
absolutely.
in an emergency situation like that, it's not always, hey, are you going to come out and fix the roof? Sometimes you just physically can't. It's the middle of the night. There's thunder, there's lightning. Sometimes people just want their hand held. Hey, you responded to me. You came out to site. You assessed the damage. You know what's going on. I understand that you can't do anything right now because of the weather, but I know you're going to be here tomorrow because you told me that. So it's just the response. It's just making sure that your customer service is at the top of the list.
Oops. Okay. Top of the list. I think looks like you cut out just a little bit right there at the end, but I think we got the audio there. Great. No, that's really helpful advice. And I know you've touched on it just a little bit in the last question, but how does your emergency call process work? What information should an owner be ready to provide when they have that call and get connected with a person?
So ultimately what we want to know is where the leak is located on the building and what the roof access is. Everything outside of that, we can pretty much figure out if we need to based on customer history or, aerial views, roof reports and things like that. We just want to know how we can get up there and where in the building it's located. Outside of that, we can, like I said, figure it out. When a customer calls in, if it's an after hours emergency, we have what we call the bat phone. And our coordinator carries that at all times. And that's the only phone in the company that's like, if that rings, you better pick it up and you better follow up with that person who is on the other line immediately. Because that will filter all of our after hours emergencies. As far as during normal business hours emergency, anybody. You could reach anybody in the company and they will get you to the correct person in the maintenance department, which is usually either myself or Sandy, our coordinator. And whether it's a phone call or a voicemail, a text message, email, whatever it is, that will be filtered through myself and my coordinator. And we'll take it from there. We'll reach out to the customer. We'll let them know we're coming. We'll reach out to the techs, let them know what they're, getting into. We'll follow up with any manufacturers, sales reps, or anything like that need to be informed of the situation. But everything in the service department, we really kind of take it and we distribute it where it needs to go. So we don't like there to have to be 10 different touches on anything before we can say, yes, we're confirmed to go out. We just want that customer to know, like, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and then we'll backpedal internally to make sure all of the information is just dissipated as much as it needs to be to the rest of the company. Disseminated. That was the word I was trying to look for. I'm sorry. Disseminated.
It's okay. We got it.
But ultimately, yeah, that's what it is. We try to make it as seamless and as painless as possible from the customer side. Our customer experience, we want to be quick. We want it to be thorough. We want it to be good every time. And that is limiting how many different touches we have to make with that customer before we can get the technicians on site and get their problem solved.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is when somebody's calling in and they have an emergency. Yeah, when somebody's calling in and they have an emergency, I think the most important thing is make it as painless as possible. Make it as few steps as possible. Making sure that your voicemail or your on-call is accurate. And if they're calling in, letting them know, like, hey, if this is an emergency, like at the top of the list, don't make them go through the entire rigmarole of the company directory and all that stuff. Immediately be like, hey, if this is an emergency, call this number, hang up and call this number, or reach out this way. Because otherwise it wastes time. People get frustrated and they want an answer right away. It's an emergency. It's a bad situation. They have pain. So you have to make sure that that's all on top. You lose employees, people change, update your systems, making sure that everybody is in the system. You hire a new person, it's frustrating when you call someplace and it's, you don't know the person's last name, or you can't get into their call directory, or, that I'm just going to hang up. I'm going to hang up. I'm going to go on to the next person because it's frustrating that I can't find the answer that I'm looking for. So making sure that stuff's up to date.
Yeah, like I said, we set our system up to be that way right from the start. When they call in after hours, the first option they get is an after hours emergency line. And it doesn't have to be raining for emergencies to come through. Emergencies could be wind related. Emergencies could be something fell onto the roof. So that being the first option for all of our customers to call in is one of those things that we do. And then we have a dedicated, it's our Fix My Roof email that anybody can email 24/7. It's monitored 24/7 so that we know when something comes through there, we really have to pay attention to it. Because on the weekend, you can get busy with family and things like that. You're not always checking your emails as frequently as possible. But if we see something come through on this one, we know we've got to really pay attention to it and jump on it as soon as something comes through. So it's just, setting up your process to be as seamless as you can from the jump.
I think it's very important to make sure that you're updating your technology too. That your apps are up to date and things like that, because when you're trying to reach out to not only customers, but also your techs or your other employees, making sure everybody's up to date. I know I've had trouble in emergency situations where I've tried to call Sarah because she has an Android and I have an iPhone, and sometimes it won't ring, or I'll have an issue with trying to send a picture or a video. And she would have the bat phone, and she knows that if that phone rings or anything comes through that phone, that I'm going to check it. She can ignore me otherwise, but if that phone rings, we know it's important. But to the point of, being ever since COVID, I think everybody really was forced to go digital. So making sure that all your processes are up to date and everybody understands how to get their work orders and how to get the information out to the people and how to get your time and all that kind of stuff is very important in that emergency situation, because you may have to bill or get the information out like the following day. So you want to make sure that everything's there when you need it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's all very good advice. And so once that contractor is dispatched out to the roof emergency, what does that initial response look like on site?
So I think it depends on the size of the emergency, right? So if it's a leak where water's just coming in, leaking over a high value piece of equipment or in a home in an area that they can't really afford to have leaking in, It's just to get us a technician on site as soon as possible is primarily the goal. Because for something like that, there are a lot of different options we can do as far as temporary repairs to get them watertight in the event that a larger repair is needed. On something like a blow off or catastrophic where you lose a piece of the building or structurally you're concerned about something, we would more than likely send out one of our superintendents and the sales rep and maybe another representative to get eyes on the scope of the damage, and understand ourselves what type of mobilization is necessary. Is this going to be a full production crew that's needed? Do we just need a couple of laborers to clear debris? So it would ultimately depend on the size, but I would say your average run of the mill emergency, we're just going to get technicians out as quick as we can. For a larger issue like a wall coming down or a roof coming off entirely, that's something that we would definitely want some more experienced eyes on ahead of time so that we can really have the best plan of attack and get things done for the customer without a lot of, things happening in between that take more time and waste more money on their end.
And that goes back to the customer, like I said before, knowing what they have, right? Is the roof under guarantee? Is this something that you're going to run through insurance? Do you have the approval from insurance to make large repairs? I don't want to hit you with a $10,000 emergency repair bill and then you say, oh, well, the insurance isn't going to cover that. I don't know what I'm going to do. We've got to have some of those questions answered first, and getting out the site and seeing what it is and being able to talk to the customer and assess that is very important. They have to know what they're approving before we can just start doing all of this kinds of work and all this kind of crazy stuff, right? So it's really important, like you said, to ask those questions, kind of have that script of, is this a new roof? Is this an old roof? Are you a new customer? I mean, not every customer that calls in an emergency is a existing customer. Sometimes people are just going through the Yellow Pages or the Google search, because we don't use Yellow Pages anymore, but they're just going through trying to find somebody to answer the phone, right? So having that kind of script and asking those questions helps us prepare and know what we're getting out to. Like Sarah said, is this leaking over an important area? Is this leaking over a machine? Is this just in the middle of a warehouse? So the more questions we can ask, the better, and the more prepared we can be to know if we have to send 2 guys or 4 guys or 6 guys or whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I know it'll look different, depending on the emergency. But what kind of tools and tactics are you using, kind of in those first hours to protect the interior of the building and kind of the structure itself?
Some of that,
It depends,
depends on when you get out there.
Yeah, sometimes it's something so big on the outside that there's really nothing immediate we can do. We need to install a diverter or a tarp or something on the inside. Sometimes it's creating a sump or something on the roof that diverts the water away from that area while we can get eyes on it and really reassess. We've got all sorts of tricks and tools in our, magical handbag here. But it does just depend on the situation. I would say the most immediate thing that we do, tarps. I mean, you probably hear tarps all the time, tarps. Now on a flat roof, it's not ideal to put a tarp up because it's flat, right? It's more for pitched roofs. But sometimes it's a unit. Sometimes it's ductwork. Sometimes, it is something that we could just throw a tarp over, tie it down really well for the first hour or two before we can really start getting a repair in place. But yeah, very, very conditional to the customer and the type of building we're working on.
No, I would agree. And, we're fortunate to where we've built the service department and the guys that we have and the trucks that we have, where our guys are like Swiss Army knives. They're kind of proficient in a lot of different types of roofing and ideas and whatnot. And our vans are set up as such. So we've got a lot of different things within the vans that we use for our service side that, if they get called, they'll make those temporary repairs, things that are good and cold, things that are good underwater, things that are good for this material, that material. We try and overstock the vans with types of things because you never know when an emergency is going to hit. And then we've got that stuff at the shop where it's like, hey, swing by the shop and pick up this, and this. So again, asking the questions, being prepared in the trucks, all of those things kind of get us prepared for when we get out to site, because an emergency is just that. You don't know what the emergency is. If you cut your finger, you're going to have to go to the emergency room. Is it too deep? Do I need stitches? Is it going to stop bleeding? I mean, you don't know the answer until you get there. So you just try to do the best to put it, something on it to stop the bleeding. And that's all we want to do. We just want to stop the bleeding and make the customer happy.
Yeah. And we do a lot of internal research, a lot of internal testing with different manufacturers and material types, specifically for those more difficult times of the year. If somebody calls us and says it's raining inside in January and we're in the middle of a deep freeze, there's not really a whole lot we can do in situations like that. So like we look for cold weather material, things that we could put down in the extreme cold, or, material that actually sticks in water when we put it down. So there's a lot of internal work that we do preemptively to try to address that situation, so that when we're in it, we know the guys have what they need and we know the product is going to work.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so speaking of those, temporary emergency fixes, how do you balance those with planning for kind of the longer term repairs or restoration once, the emergency is dealt with and, the weather cooperates and everything's kind of contained? What does that look like?
So it depends on what the customer's needs are. That's always going to be the dictating factor, is what does the customer need? Is the customer looking for an urgent, permanent fix right now? Does the customer need some time to get the insurance involved? Or is the customer really not in the market for anything other than that emergency repair because they've got a capital replacement in line, or, they're just not looking to spend that money? So it's, again, at the customer's dictation. We're always going to give our opinion. We're always going to give what our recommended action is. We like to give a good, better, best scenario, and paint that picture for the customer so that they understand both where they're at with their repair and with their issues, and where we can get them and what that looks like, both financially and physically, getting them on schedule and everything like that. But ultimately it would depend on what the customer's circumstances are. We've got a handful of customers who will always call us for their emergencies. They always want an invoice right away, and then they want us to get back on for permanent repairs almost immediately. Then we've got a handful of customers who are, I'm not sure, I want to, check my options, see what insurance says and things like that. We will always present what is required for the roof to get up to code and up to snuff. But ultimately our actions will be dictated by the customer's needs more than anything.
Yeah.
And it's important to know that, right? I mean, a temporary repair is just that, but it can be a temporary repair. Is it going to be out there for 6 months? Is it going to be out there for 6 weeks? What is the ultimate goal of, how long is this going to be out there, and how long is it going to be a solution? What does the insurance company need? What are they going to pay for? What are they requiring us to do? So we have to get the documentation and give them the permanent solution. Sometimes the roof is already failed and you can't make a permanent repair because there's wet insulation or there's other things that are going on, where you may have to talk to the customer and say, hey, listen, this section blew off because the roof was already in a failure point. Now you have to make the decision of, are we going to try and do a big Band-Aid that's not going to be under guarantee, but we can get you watertight? Or are you going to then put it through insurance and try and get the rest of the roof replaced and do it, the right way? That's one of the things that one of our core values is always willing to try. And we're always going to try and give the best solution and the best ideas to the customer. We might not always have the answer right at that moment, but we're going to try and find the answer, and we're going to try and find the solution that's going to work.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. And so for building owners, what role does the documentation play during this emergency response, especially when working with, insurance, planning for repairs, the warranties, all that?
Documentation is everything. I mean, it's everything. It's the single most important piece of our process is documentation. For many reasons, right? The customer wants to know what the heck's going on up there. A lot of customers don't have, readily available access to their roof that they're willing to go out on. So whatever they see is what we're going to present to them. A lot of times customers don't know there's something wrong until it leaks on the inside. So first thing we do is every single person who gets on that roof takes pictures. I don't care if it's from the customer's perspective, our perspective, a project manager, a sales rep, everybody who gets on that roof takes pictures, and then it gets immediately uploaded to our system. Our system, we use Dataforma. Everybody who in the company has his mobile access, so they can easily just pull up the work order or project that we're going out on and snap pictures directly to it. And like I said, everybody has access to do that. the technicians know that we need to document the entire preceding condition before we put anything down on that roof. We document our safety setup. We document our ladder setup. We document where we're going to load. We document everything, because the first time you don't document it, somebody's going to come back and ask you for the information that you didn't take pictures of. So we document visually, obviously with photos. We take videos. We document anything that we use on site, notes, you name it. We put everything in the system. Because a lot of times customers are going to come back after the fact. They're like, did you by chance do this? Or they're trying to work with an insurance company, or they've got to submit something because they're selling, something like that. And it really is the contractor's responsibility to document everything they're seeing when they're up there, because you are the person who's on the roof. You are the person that homeowner or that customer called to say, hey, get up there and tell me what's going on. And if we miss something that looks bad on us, then we're not covering our tracks. We're not making sure that, or not tracks, covering our bases. We're not doing the right thing for the customer, because if the customer has to come back to us and ask us for something they need and we don't have, we missed something. So documentation is probably the single most important piece of our process, both internally for us and everybody involved, but also for the customer.
Yeah, for sure.
Also the manufacturer with your, with maintenance and service and stuff like that. I mean, in an event like this, that's one of the first things that the insurance company and manufacturers and people are going to look at. Okay, you put a roof on, it's 10 years old. How did you take care of it? Because if you did absolutely nothing and the roof, had foliage all over and drains were plugged and all these different things, well, it's lack of maintenance. Things fail because they're blocked up or not taken care of. So making sure that we document when we do our inspections, when we look at the roofs throughout the year, or service calls, that's all important information that we can give back to customers and say, yeah, no, here's what they've done, here's where they've been, here's where the story of their building. We don't want to just put a roof on and forget about it. There's a document or a process that says, you put a roof on, it's supposed to last 20 years, but without maintenance, it's, 12 or 15 years, right? I mean, you buy a car, you change the oil, right? If you don't change the oil, what happens? The car doesn't last very long. So it's the same type of thing. You have to be on top of what's going on above you. And like Sarah said, some people don't just forget about it. It's a roof. It's over my head. I don't worry about it. I love the restaurants that remodel the whole entire inside with the roof that's completely failed. And then they call us and say, hey, we just remodeled the restaurant. We need to fix the roof. Well, I'm sorry that you spent X amount of dollars fixing the inside and made it pretty and didn't worry about the most important part before you started that. It's just a backwards process.
That is probably like something that happens to us on a weekly basis. We get a phone call from somebody saying, this brand new plaster we put in is falling off and slopping off the walls because the roof is leaking. And, that foresight is not common before, remodels, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. Well, speaking of, preventing emergencies, how can ongoing maintenance and inspections help prevent or even reduce emergencies in the future?
So Eric's oil change analogy is the perfect way to do it. I just bought a new car, and in order for me to maintain my warranty on my car, I've got to do scheduled maintenance. I have to do my oil changes, tire rotations, and then it's the exact same process on the roof. You buy a new roof, you don't expect it to just be okay. You have to maintain it. You have to address anything that could potentially cause defects and wear and tear to that roof, which is the whole point of a maintenance program, is to get ahead of those issues before they become issues. Save yourself the money in the long run, because you're not reactive. You're being proactive, and you're making sure, are my seams in place? Did something pop up that could potentially be related to the warrant or to the manufacturer? It's not my problem. Or there is a giant storm. You had a bunch of hail come in. Now I have to get this addressed. So maintenance is everything to obviously maintain your NDL, but it's like any other product in your life. It keeps the things from going bad before they go bad. If we can be proactive, we spend less reactive money, and ultimately that money can go towards capital investments like a new roof when it calls for it. If you don't maintain your roof, that roof's not going to last you as long as the manufacturer said it would, because you still have to take care of it, like anything that you buy. So a maintenance program is the best way to maintain the value of your roof and get the most longevity out of it and also not have to pay a ton of money in repairs long term, because if you see these things coming up, you can plan for it. You can take proactive steps to stop it, and also report things to the manufacturer if it doesn't end up being something that is pertaining to the material itself. That's something that the manufacturer needs to know about, because it could potentially affect other roofs. So, I mean, the list of reasons why we should always do proactive maintenance is just never ending. You know, there's not a bad reason to do proactive maintenance. And I would bet any one of our customers we have on our maintenance programs would probably tout the same thing. You know, their overall expenditure is down. They were able to do capital replacements sooner than was originally anticipated, because they saved that money and because they took a proactive approach versus a reactive approach.
Yeah.
With that
definitely.
being said, the hardest thing to do is sell somebody a maintenance contract or tell them they need to repair the roof that they just spent $100,000 on.
Yeah.
You know, even
Yeah.
though the warranty documentation in the manufacturer says, in order to maintain this, and this, you have to have documented maintenance records. You have to document what you've done. You have to call in leak calls. And, you know, it's so hard for us to, again, goes back to that beginning of the conversation, knowing what the customer has, knowing what they need, you know, making sure that your CRM is up to date with warranties on the buildings and all that. Because if we're not notifying the manufacturer and you're not taking care of the roof the way you're supposed to, you're going to have more problems. You're going to have earlier failures. It's just common sense. You know, we would like to be on your building twice a year. Based on our climate, you've got your spring, you've got your fall, you've got your winter, you've got all that. You know, we want to make sure we're staying on top of it. Some buildings might require maybe a third or a fourth inspection, doing it quarterly, depending on, are you covered by trees? Is there more potential for problems? You know, there's no one-stop shop on how to take care of your roof and how to be maintenance and how to do it. I mean, it's just do it. If I can get on your building once a year and look at it, you know, that's better than not doing it until you call me and say it's leaking over the president's desk and you have to get here immediately. Because then the bleeding is, it's going to cost you a lot more, because it's after hours, it's overtime. You know, you're basically giving me an open checkbook to fix it because it's over the president's desk. Where if I could have maintained this, I could have been up there, I could have fixing things, I probably could have helped prevent this from happening, because that drain wouldn't have clogged. The air conditioner condensate wouldn't have been a problem. We would have noticed that the air conditioner technician came and serviced your unit and there's holes all over the place, and all those things that happen that you don't realize until after the fact.
Yeah. And a real story we actually just had at a commercial shopping center in Schaumburg. We got there and there's no maintenance on this roof. We confirmed with the customer there's no maintenance being performed. We got up there and there was 2 feet of water on the roof. That roof was ready to cave in because it was not prepared for that amount of water. If they had done maintenance, if they had considered the condition and had somebody go up and inspect, they would have been told, hey, you don't have a single open drain. You don't have anywhere for this water to go. And that's a lot of weight, you know. Roofs are not meant to maintain that much water. You know, it's certainly a situation where the customer could have found out that pain point by having the entire ceiling collapse in versus having one leak over juniors come through. So the reality of those things, you know, is pretty scary. It's pretty scary. How badly things can go because of a lack of maintenance.
Yeah.
The other thing too is you also got to think about climate. Like here in Chicago, we've been lucky the last handful of years, but you know, in other parts of the country with snow load, you know, if you've got a ton of snow on the roof and you didn't do maintenance, now all of a sudden you've got ice damming, you've got all kinds of other conditions. So you really got to think about, how do I maintain my roof throughout all seasons? You know, there's contractors out there who are shoveling feet off of, you know, Walmarts and different types of areas to get that snow load off and get that weight off of the roof. You know, weight on a roof is weight on a roof, and it doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, when I go up on a roof in Schaumburg and there's geese actually swimming on the roof because the water's so deep that they're swimming, you've got a problem that you need to address. You're making a natural lake on top of your roof. A true story. Yeah, true story.
We can send you pictures. We're so serious. This happened recently this spring. So
it's a very expensive bird bath.
Right, exactly. You know, the most important thing with maintenance is that do something. Do something. Get somebody on your roof on a annual
Something.
basis at the very least. That is the most important thing. Yes, it costs money. Yes, it's overhead.
And
Put it in
call
your
out the
budget.
defects as soon as you notice them. Don't wait
Yeah.
because they don't get better.
So, to kind of wrap things up, what advice would you give building owners about preparing for roof emergencies before they happen? Anything else to add?
Eric's got a decade more experience than I do, so let's let him answer that one.
It goes back to the maintenance. It goes back to knowing your building, paying attention to your details. I mean, you know, I drive around on a daily basis and I am always looking for buildings that have issues. You know, when you pull, yeah, after a storm, when you pull into a building, if it's your building or you pull into a subdivision, look around, look at the perimeter of the building. There's all the gravel stop there? Or is there something hanging over the side that wasn't when you left the night before? You know, there's always ways to prepare for emergencies and prepare for things that you weren't planning on. But knowing what's going on your building, knowing what's going on in your surroundings, there's different ways that you can make sure that your roof is going to last. If you don't want to get a maintenance plan, have a maintenance guy go up on the roof. Have somebody go up on the roof every so often and just pop up there and take a look and see what's going on. You know, we get that all the time of, well, we do our own maintenance. Okay, great. What do you do? How do you document it? How do you clean it? You know, you make repairs, you know, all these types of things. I'll ask that question to a customer who's got their own maintenance plan. You know, hey, great. I'm glad that's working out for you. If it doesn't work out, give me a call. I don't think you can prepare for an emergency, but I think you can absolutely prevent emergencies by doing all of the things that we talked about. You know, maintaining your roof, knowing what your roof is, knowing how old your roof is. Are you in a climate area that is more detrimental? You know, I mean, if we're in the south, you got a lot of heat and you got a lot of issues that are cooking your roof. If you're in the north, you've got some more cold temperatures, and you know, knowing what those things are. Also making sure that you're calling a contractor who understands that. You know, there's a lot of truck in the truck and fly by night contractors out there who, you know, in Chicago, I've heard stories of, well, the guy was coating our parking lot and he said he could do our roof. And you know, so it's like, no, the guy who's putting the asphalt sealant in your parking lot cannot coat your roof. It's not the same material. It's asphalt, but it doesn't work that way, right? So making sure that you know what you're doing and you know what's going on in your building to prevent emergencies. There's roofs in Chicago that are 100 years old on churches and stuff like that. The old coal tar pitch and all this crazy stuff that was, you know, done years and years ago. You know, and then there's the materials today that don't last as long. You know, they're 15, 20, 25 years. Know what you have and know how to maintain it.
The best way for me to kind of, you know, so when you buy a new furnace, they tell you when you pay your mortgage, change your filters, right? So my best recommendation would be is every year when you go to pay your homeowner's insurance and you walk through your house and you take pictures of all the things that are valuable. So God forbid, in the event of, you know, what it was, think about how valuable those baby photos are. Insurance won't replace those.
Yeah.
Get wet, nobody's going to replace those, right?
Yeah.
You're going to lose personal information. You're going to lose meaningful things if you don't treat your house or your business as an asset that needs attention. So every year when you're going to take those pictures of your house to re-up your homeowner's insurance and know what the value of everything is, call your contractor. Set up somebody to come out and take a look. Even if you don't want to be on a maintenance contract where you come out every year, call a contractor, do an inspection, at the very least an inspection to know what the condition of your roof is, right? Because you don't control when those leaks happen. You don't control when a tornado hits or hail damage hits or anything like that. And once the damage is done, the damage is done. And unfortunately, you keep a lot of things in your house or your business that you can't recover from. So even if it's just a roof leak can cause major internal damage if you don't address it quickly enough. Also, you could prevent that damage if you are proactive. So,
and that's a good point with the insurance. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on with insurance that we hear about where people are getting assessed isn't the right word, but they're at their renewal process. It's, well, your roof is 15 years old or it's documented as 15 years old. The expectancy of your roof is only, you know, 18 years or 20 years. So we're either going to raise your premium by 40% or you need to replace your roof in order to keep your premiums where they are. So knowing those types of things, being able to say, well, wait a minute, Mr. Insurance Company, I know my roof's at a certain age, but I have it inspected twice a year. I have documented, that I've done this, this, and this. I've done tuck pointing, whatever the situation is. Those types of things can certainly help with the insurance side as well. Because there's a lot of, at least in Chicago, I don't know if it's throughout the rest of the company, but there's a lot of people that will call and say, hey, listen, I need your help. They're telling me I have to replace my roof, because it's so many years old, and they're going to raise my premium. And what do I do? What do I do? So knowing all that information and having somebody you can lean on and say, here's what it is. And we can talk to the insurance company. I'm not going to write the book and say, that your roof is, perfectly fine and whatnot, but we can certainly talk to them and plead your case and say, hey, listen, they've done maintenance, they've done this, they've done that. The roof is in good condition. It's probably got 4 or 5 years left. Let's not, say they got to replace it tomorrow type thing. So, making sure you stay on top of that also for your insurance is very important as well.
Yep,
Yeah.
what he said.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. That was a wealth of information. And for those of you listening, I hope you got a lot of takeaways from this, because I know I did. Please be sure to check out Raincoat Roofing on their directory on AskARoofer.com. And Sarah and Eric, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with all of our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, so that's it for this episode of the Ask a Roofer podcast. You can find more episodes on AskARoofer.com, and we will see you on the next one.
If your roof needs answers, subscribe now to the Ask a Roofer podcast. We've got your questions covered, one episode at a time. Go to AskARoofer.com to submit your questions and learn more. Stay tuned and keep those questions coming.